Lords of the Fallen starts with a really impressive cinematic. It's crazy to me that this is a 2014 game released for the base PS4, and overall, the game has a really strong art direction. So, why does this game have such a mediocre reception, and why there's a buzz about the sequel, also called Lords of the Fallen? Hello everybody, my name is Mats, and today we are gonna understand the reception of Lords of the Fallen. Lords of the Fallen was released worldwide on October 28, 2014 for the PS4, Windows and Xbox One. The reception was, and still is, nothing special. I want to know exactly why, and considering that the 2023 game is having a much better reception, I decided to play the original game and see what it is about. The best way that I can quickly describe this game is that it feels like a combination of Diablo 3 with Dark Souls. You get many weapons, way more than a traditional Soulsborne type of game. Also, the game has a somewhat unique approach to magic. It also has a traditional HP system. If you die, you will lose your HP, and if you die without recovering them, the HP will be forever lost. In order to level up, instead of talking with an NPC in a particular place, there are crystals scattered around the maps. You can have multiple uses for the HP, but the most traditional use is to level up. Instead of directly leveling up, you have to spend that HP on spell or attribute points. We use the spell points to upgrade or learn new magics and the attribute to level up our stats. The game has three main builds: strength, faith, and agility. As expected, your weapons scale with any of those three attributes, and you need a minimum amount of points to wield certain weapons. It's not a good idea to spread the points, but instead, it's better to stick with your preferred build. Strength weapons are usually big, like great swords or big axes. Agility has small weapons with low damage but higher critical chance, like daggers or claws. And faith allows you to use magical weapons, like clubs or staves. As I mentioned, the game will quickly give you many options of weapons for you to play with at the very beginning, so you can try everything and choose your playstyle. I was gonna play as a rogue, but very quickly I decided to toss that aside and go full faith after having fun with the stave. Pressing the triangle button will allow you to equip and unequip your shield, plus that's the button to interact with items scattered across the world. Unequipping the shield will allow you to wield your weapons two-handed, and some of them, usually small ones like daggers or claws, will allow you to dual wield them. Hours later, we are going to get a magical gauntlet that uses MP to cause some devastating long range of attacks. You can choose between three types of attacks: long range, a short one similar to shooting a shotgun, and the last one which creates an explosion. From the get-go, the best one by a huge mile is the long range attack. Oh, and talking about MP, it will slowly regenerate, and besides using it for the gauntlet, we use it to cast any spell you have. And later in the game, I realized you also use MP with certain attacks, like the side one that I showed at the beginning. You have to roll and evade attacks and use any opportunity to kill your enemies. Your shield, depending on the size of it, will have a special effect. I only use the small one, which allows you to parry enemies' attacks, but I truly never tried to do so. Well, that was a very quick overlook of the gameplay. Honestly, it's not that bad, but also, it's nothing special. I will talk much more in depth of the gameplay mechanics later on the video, but for now, let's jump to the story. We play as big, bald, and muscular Harkin. For some reason, he was put in prison, but we are quickly liberated by a monk called Caslo. This monastery is being overruled by the main enemies of the game, the Rogar. Our objective is simple: stop the main antagonist of the game, a god called Adir. We whack, hit, and slash many enemies, and after destroying some bosses, we teleport into their realm to reclaim their crystal and slow down the invasion. We whack even more enemies and kill the boss, and we succeed in getting the crystal to stop the invasion. It's time to go back to the monastery and keep going. And that's when I stopped playing. After 4 or 5 hours, I decided not to continue. Why? Well, I will explain that in a moment, but first, I want to talk a little bit about the behind the scenes of the game. The game was co-developed by two different companies, CI Games and Deck 13, being CI Games the publisher and the ones in charge of the story and the art of the game, while Deck 13 did the heavy part of the project, the programming and making sure that everything works. Additionally, they use up to 100 contractors from a Chinese third party, a company called Virtuos. These two companies have fascinating stories, so let's quickly see who they are. CI Games is a Polish company that had a lot of mergers over the years. It was founded in 2002 after the merger of three different ones: Lemon Interactive, We Opened Eyes, and Tatanka. At this moment, the company was known as City Interactive. In 2007, City Interactive made two additional mergers with other companies, Oni Games and Italian. By 2012, the development team started to adopt the name CI Games, and after a year, in 2013, City Interactive made the legal change to CI Games. The producer of the game is Tomasz Gopp, who was a senior producer for CD Projekt Red for The Witcher and The Witcher 2. Gopp was one of the most important people working on the game, since thanks to him and his partners on Deck 13 in Germany, were able to finish the game by the holiday season. Talking about Deck 13, they had a somewhat similar story. Deck 13 is the successor of a company called Artex Software, famous for doing the point-and-click game Ankh, the Tales of Mystery for the RISC OS. Deck 13 was founded in 2001 with a different name, Trigger Lab, and by April 2002 they changed their name to Deck 13. They eventually did a remake of Ankh and produced other types of RPG games. Now, I was planning on doing an in-depth talk about the making of the game, but I hit several roadblocks. I wasn't able to find anything about the behind the scenes and making of the game. At some point, I didn't even know if I was doing a terrible research or what. Well, plot twist. Indeed, I was doing a bad research. I had to rewrite this section of the script several times until, by random chance, I found it. First, I found these little new notes from a webpage called rpgwatch.com talking about the contract that CI Games canceled with Deck 13. It states that part of the contract from 2011 was creating Lords of the Fallen. So now we know that by 2011 they were already making the game. The link to the original Polish source sadly doesn't work anymore, but the report from Eurogamer Germany works, and after clicking some links, I found it, an interview with Jan Kloos, director, and Thorsten Lange, technical director of Lords of the Fallen. They start saying that Lords of the Fallen was the second game of that genre they did, and they work with people from all over the world. They start to list the things that went right and wrong. Let's quickly grab the most important pieces about what they did right. Creating the first concepts for a brand new IP is both challenging and thrilling at the same time. In open talks with the publisher CI Games about what was possible time and budget-wise, and what wasn't, we soon decided that we better not try to do too much at once, but rather focus on one core gameplay element and build the game around it. Luckily, we share a vision with producer Tomasz Gopp, our passion for Demon's Souls. So, we agreed with Tomasz that the tactical action combat should become the one core element of the game, that we could start with it and build everything else around it. Our experience with similar combat system and our love for Demon's Souls resulted in a very clear game mechanic that we kept until the end, even though some people let it say it really played quite a lot like Demon's Souls' successor, Dark Souls. In any case, the tactical combat worked very well, and it was the one element that kept the game and its development together from start to finish. The game would not have become what it is now if not for lots of external feedback during the whole production. The project started off with a totally different setting, at first on paper, and it kept the setting until the first playable version was reviewed. The game was initially set on some sort of a Scottish island, and the villains look a lot like ancient Romans. However, even though the graphical quality of the assets was really good, it soon became clear that this approach did not really hit the nail on the head. After a number of reviews, a lot of this was turned around, and the Rogar, a demonic race, entered the scene. The environment, on the other hand, became somewhat more snowy, spiky, and castle-y. About the things that went wrong, They said, while the project was staffed rather well from a developer and publisher perspective, not all key personnel was in place. Missing throughout most of the project was a managing producer, someone who loves reading and writing schedules and charts, asking the tough questions and making tough decisions regarding scale, features, and deadlines. To put it short, someone who knows what to throw out of a project to make it happen. Instead, creative people on both the developer and the publisher side were striving to create the most beautiful, content-packed game one can imagine, with the result that schedules were too cramped, people had too much on their desks, and were not able to finish all the desired features on both sides. At the beginning of the project, both publisher and developer sides did not feel that it was very important to approach things too formally, and therefore there were, in some areas, no clear hierarchies or responsibilities in place. Sooner or later, this resulted in a struggle over competences, especially after some of the initial goals were not met. Throughout large portions of the development time, we were not really good at communicating. While we were not so bad at talking internally, we were really miserable communicators when it came to publisher discussions. Having a proper management structure in place also meant that the people and departments with a strong understanding were those who dominated parts of the design process. This tended to make things rather difficult, especially when detailed art design decisions were made by top management without considering the whole pipeline, giving tech and game design personnel a hard time. For our game to be noticed at all, it had to be out there before the big wave of great new titles would hit the market by Christmas 2014. So, whatever we wanted to still put in the game, it needed to be ready way before that time. That seemed extraordinarily tough, and it was only doable by crunching throughout the final months to the point where people got so stressed that you could barely talk with them. I highly encourage you to fully read this interview. You will gain a lot of insight about how this game was done, and there are a lot of interesting details. It's really impressive to know how much dedication the devs did, including a devastating crunch months before the game came out. Which isn't really that surprising, but it's really tough to know that devs keep pouring their souls to make games a reality. So, after those juicy details about the game, let's quickly give our thanks to today's not sponsor, Subscribe. With Subscribe, you're entering a world of madness since you can watch a random review like the deep down I made explaining the importance of Leon's crossbow, or the latest analysis of the amazing Ada Wong and the new Separate Ways DLC. So, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and subscribe. I support you. As I already explained, you need to spend your XP to have points towards your spells or attributes and level up those. But the XP also has a secondary cool mechanic. You may or may not have noticed, but after killing any enemy, there's a multiplier on parentheses. For a very long time, I really didn't understand what was that, but I noticed that the more enemies I kill, the higher the multiplier was and the more XP enemies will give. I still don't know if there's a drawback with having a higher XP multiplier, but the twist is that every time that you choose to level up or heal on the crystal points, the multiplier will reset, creating an interesting dilemma. Do you use your XP right now and refill your HP potions, or do you keep going, risking to lose everything and taking a chance of running out of healing potions, but having the possibility of having much more XP? I think that introduces a very fun element, though I wonder if you can exploit it by constantly killing low-level enemies. Something expected from Soulsborne games is that in order to refill your HP potions, you either use a lamp or bonfire and you get your healing items back, but the enemies respawn. Here, that doesn't happen. You lose the HP multiplier, but for some reason, enemies don't respawn. The only time that it will 100% happen is when you die. Otherwise, I have no idea why enemies sometimes respawn and others do not. Also, I noticed that sometimes the crystal wouldn't properly refill all my HP potions. Sometimes I had to press the prompt 2 times, others I just had to go to a different one. As I mentioned, the game has a unique combination of melee and magic. Before starting the game, you can choose your magic skills and what type of melee gameplay you want. The magic is divided in 3: Brawling, Deception, and Solace. Brawling focuses more on being aggressive. deception more with tricking enemies, and solace on magical defense. After reading everything, I chose the solace magics, since it seems wise to play more defensively to give me a bigger chance of survival. Let me tell you, I 100% regretted it. I regretted it so much that I really didn't spend my HP on getting any spell points. You see, the base spells for solace is an illusion to trick enemies to attack it, and you take that moment to either run or attack them. The issue is that it takes so long to cast it that I quickly realized that it wasn't worth it, and it was better to reserve that MP for the gauntlet. So that quickly turned me off of using spells altogether. With certain random drops, you are able to get some freebie spells and attribute points. I actually unlocked the second spells to raise your defense, but honestly, I never tried, since at that point it seemed pointless. Also, while I'm writing this script, I wonder if it's worth it to choose rolling, since the first spell heals you. Certain base actions will use energy. Attacks, dodge, run, jump, and lifting your shield will consume it. The game also has a weight system. The less items you have, the faster you run, and the enemy will regenerate faster. The heavier you are, the slower you and the regenerations will be. In order to level up energy, you have to spend attribute points in endurance. Leveling up will raise both your energy and your weight limit, meaning endurance is the most important stat of the game. The first hour I used some points here and there, but after deciding to go full faith, I started to focus on leveling up endurance as much as I could, while having the minimum requirement with faith to wield better faith weapons. The reason why I did this was because I realized that it makes no sense to not wield heavy armor. I thought armors were tied to your attributes, but they're not. Instead, heavy armors will weigh more, but it will give you much more poise and defense. So that's why, by the end of playing, I just looked like Jack Garland, defeating chaos. So I think it's a great idea to just spend the minimum for your favorite build and go crazy with endurance. It seems silly, but look at that energy bar. Also, having a higher energy bar will help you a little bit to pull off another unique mechanic, combo attacks. Instead of randomly mashing R1 or R2, if you time your attacks, you will see a special orange tingle on your energy bar. If you keep connecting the attacks, Arkin will do a special attack that consumes more energy, but it's more devastating. Now, in theory, this sounds super cool, but in practice, it's really difficult to pull it off. I was able to consistently do it with small weapons like daggers or the claws, but with bigger ones I wasn't able, not even with the staves. Though I must admit that I suck with any type of rhythmic mechanic, so if you love rhythm games, you will love this mechanic. In fact, the whole reason why I chose to go Faith was because I found really quickly that the damage output of early agility weapons really sucked. It barely did any type of damage, and making critical attacks was really uncommon. Once I tried the stab, I stick with it until I was able to use a better one, or better, the sight. Another huge reason why I made the change was poise. With big weapons, it's much easier to break enemies' poise and either stun them or send them backwards, so the fights usually went faster than trying to poke them. Also, you can use your two-handed weapons as a makeshift shield that will absorb some nice damage, rendering it useless to even have a shield. Finally, I dislike dual wielding because you need to use R1 or R2 to attack with your main hand and L1 or L2 to attack with your second hand. And if you're not careful, you are just going to do a lot of poking that doesn't do that much damage and doesn't break an enemy's poise. Another basic mechanic that is present here is backstabbing. If you position behind any enemy and press R1, you will perform a backstab. Something cool is that the animation will change depending on which weapon you are currently holding. The downside of this is that sometimes the character wouldn't do it and made a regular attack, wasting the opportunity. As I said, a couple of hours in, you will find a gauntlet that will be tied to your faith attribute. At the beginning, I wasn't using it that much until I noticed how devastating it can be since you can target enemies from far away. I use it here and there to snipe certain difficult enemies, and once you get a nice run, you can even upgrade it and it will do more damage. Talking about that, enemies will drop runs and sometimes even bigger runs. You cannot just use them as it is, though certain doors and treasures request using a run to open it up. Since they're kinda common to get, it's not a big deal to sacrifice one to get a nice reward. Once you teleport to the Rogar world, you will quickly meet an armorer that can break those runes. And here comes the part that really screams Diablo 3. You can use your XP to have a better chance that, when you open up a run, will have a better rarity quality. Like Diablo, armors and weapons have different levels of rarity, and some of them have the ability to equip 1 to 3 runs. And not only that, depending on where you use that run, the effect will change. If you equip the run to your armor, it will give you a different bonus than your weapon or gauntlet. The biggest deal was with the gauntlet, since it can literally change how it works. Also, you can have a trinket that will give you a minor bonus. It's really nothing special, and I used the same one during the entire run, one that gives you a little bonus to your MP regeneration. Here, on the main inventory, you have access to use different types of potions that you can toggle as your favorite with R2, and then be able to quickly use them while playing. I honestly never use anything else but the main HP potions, since I never felt the need to do otherwise. By the way, the implementation of the quick items is weird. You see, you have to press and hold the square button to use any item, but if you just press it, it will change to the next item. This created many times where I got confused, and instead of using an item, I was just scrolling. I still don't understand why they didn't use the D-pad for that and leave the square button to use an item. A good and nice touch they added is that, unlike most Soulsborne games, you can actually cancel drinking the potion. If, for whatever reason, you aren't gonna be able to heal, just roll and the character will immediately do it. I tried to test it if I could cancel other animations, but I wasn't able to. The game has a lot of different types of enemies, but the most common ones are these green things that are blind. At the beginning they will be easy to deal with, but they can be deadly if you're not careful. The game has little spikes of difficulty since those blind enemies are very easy to deal with, until you have to fight the ones who wear shields. For some reason, they're very difficult, and I even lost to a couple of them, especially the big ones that I had to snipe them with the gauntlet because I didn't see any other way to continue. The game had another spike difficulty when I traversed to the world of the Rogar. It took me quite a while to figure out how to deal enough damage to that big crossbow and grenade tossed monster, though I have to admit I was still using the base stave since I didn't have enough faith points to wield something more powerful. During these 5 hours I encountered a couple of mini-bosses, but the only one that stands out was this dude that his life is tied to some type of vessel. You can literally roll to destroy it, cause if you don't do it, it will keep getting up. Once you know what to do, it isn't that difficult to beat it, but what makes it harder is that this mini-boss is always surrounded by random enemies. Now, one of the most exciting moments is when you have to face a boss. You've been playing for hours, you're still a rookie, trying to understand what happened and how to play it, and out of nowhere, the game puts you in a situation where there is this incredible stopping force. After defeating some more enemies on this monastery, this awesome cutscene starts to play. I was super excited to see how the first boss of the game is gonna be, and... No, for real. This is the actual in-game sound I had, or better, lack of. You see, for some reason my game bugged and sometimes the music would randomly stop or wouldn't even be there. I reinstalled the game several times, but that didn't work. And I know it was a bug since I researched it to see if the game was this dull, but oops, it was me who had this bug for some reason. That made the boss fights even worse since all of them felt like nothing special. I fought 4 bosses: the first warden, commander, worshipper, and infiltrator. And as boring as their name sounds, those battles were also kinda forgettable. None of them represented this big and epic moment like defeating Gascoigne. Oh, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Oh, okay. Oh, no. Heal. Oh, God. Oh, bitch, I have no idea how I evaded that. Oh, God, no, I wasted the opportunity. Or Martin Lugarius on Bloodborne. Okay, this is a very complicated boss. This is a very complicated boss. The first phase, it's fairly easy, but my god, this fucking part is a nightmare. But you have more chances of doing visceral attacks. Because he decided to go melee. Alright. Instead, it was more like, oh, that was it? Okay.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
What the hell is this?
The most relevant one was Worshipper, the dude that when you defeat it, you take his side. It makes some type of AoE type of attack that insta-kills you, no matter what. After the 4th time, I had to Google to understand what I was doing wrong, and it turns out that you have to stand inside a small shrine to resist the damage. Other than that, I cannot remember anything from any of the bosses. Sure, I can look up my recording, but I'm writing this hours after I finish the game and I have no idea about any of them. And that's pretty much the mechanics of the game. You can find scrolls with lore in it, and you talk with certain NPCs, and you can actually make some decisions, but I have zero idea if it really has any impact on the long term. I won't talk too much about this aspect of the game because the music bug really threw me off. I genuinely thought that the game was like that. After that CGI, everything felt dull. It's important that I mention this because, again, I was super checked out about the story about 20 minutes in. I care more about the gameplay and to understand how to play the game than understanding the story. I have no clue what my goal was or why the main character was there. I don't know why we are fighting or why I was in prison. It's undeniable how good the graphics and the art direction is. The monastery is full by many lamps and fireplaces that creates a really moody place. When you go outside, everything is covered with a layer of snow, and if you peek, you can see that this monastery is probably located at the top of some mountains. The scenery will change the deeper we traverse through the monastery, until we arrive at the final section of this area, that is the cemetery. Afterwards, we will teleport to the Rogar world, where there is a striking difference. This world looks more aggressive. The bars, chairs, and many environmental things are really pointy, giving it this edgy look. Even the treasures here look different from our world. I think that both the graphics and the art direction are the strongest points of the game, but here is the deal. The gameplay isn't that exciting, and coupled with this weird looter mechanic, I can safely say that this game is nothing special. I will resume the entire game in the words of Miss June Jambalaya.
It's not bad, it's just not good.
Now, there's nothing else but to talk about my final opinions of the game. Lords of the Fallen is easy, like really easy. Compared with a traditional Soulsborne game, this feels like you have an easy mode on at all times. It's really not that difficult to annihilate any enemy from the beginning. Since there isn't a particular mechanic that you must master, not it has something extremely unique and fun to set it apart from any other game, sadly this game falls into the category of forgettable. Sure, it has amazing graphics and a very strong art direction, and it has this HP multiplier plus the attack combo mechanic, but I never felt the necessity of mastering the combos nor to get the maximum amount of HP possible. Lords of the Fallen really didn't do anything wrong except being a jack of all trades. Sure, it has many mechanics and many weapons, but they didn't master any of them, and this was a huge mistake since they had no idea that some months after they released the game, a beast was gonna come out. In March 2015, From Software released one of the best video games ever done, Bloodborne. I really don't need to explain much, but it makes sense why no one talked that much about Lords of the Fallen. Why play this if you could play a game that actually poses a real challenge and it has a much more fun gameplay? Sure, you can have as many weapons as this game, nor you can cast magic in a traditional way. But you know what the game has? Guns, and the parry mechanic of Bloodborne is way better than anything that this game tried to do. I have to say that even though the game is forgettable, the moment-to-moment gameplay can be really fun, and if you are someone that has never played a Soulsborne and you are scared to dip your toes in one, I think that this game is a great entrance to anyone that struggled a lot. You will have all the basic gameplay mechanics of any Soulsborne game, and the tutorial is very clear and it's really helpful if you are struggling. If you just wanna play something different that has some looted elements, this game can be as fun as playing Diablo or Borderlands. Having said all of that, if I had to rate this game, I would give it a 6 over a... Oh god, no, I wasted the opportunity! Before ending the video, I want to talk a little bit about the sequel reboot. By the time you watch this, Lords of the Fallen 2023 already came out. Now, I could start and praise the looks and gameplay feeling of the new game, which I am actually gonna do right now. I am not surprised that the game looks this good, considering that what we saw 10 years ago. Also, the combat mechanics seems even more fluid than the original, and the combination of melee with range attacks and magic seems insane. I think that the looter aspect is back, but I really don't mind it considering the fluidity that we see in battles. Coupled with the fact that this game was showcased several times with the Unreal Engine 5, it seriously is one of the prettiest games that came out in 2023. But the real thing that I want to talk about it is the little development hell that this sequel had. I was really curious to know why didn't Deck 13 help with developing this sequel? If we read, the development was done by Hexworks, a company funded by CI Games in 2020. I started to think about this, and at the same time that CI Games and Deck 13 were in talks to make this sequel, back in 2015, Deck 13 was already developing The Surge, which is considered a somewhat spiritual sequel to The Lords of the Fallen, since it borrowed many mechanics. I was looking for more information about why Deck 13 didn't work on the sequel, and initially, I found an interview by Marek Tymiński, the CEO of CI Games, done by Robert Purchase for Eurogamer. Here he asked him why Deck 13 didn't work on the sequel. Initially, Tymiński didn't want to talk too much about them, but after Purchase pressed, he answered. To be honest, it's all confidential, he responded. We have spoken about certain things we could probably do after the release of Lords of the Fallen, but at the end of the day, we came to the conclusion, both sides, that it won't happen. And as far as I know, they have another project, and I wish them luck. We have a very clear thinking on how we want to make Lords of the Fallen 2, and we have a very good idea. We know that they had problems with communications, assigning roles, and taking too much time to answer all the requests. I decided to dig a little bit more, and I found a report done by Charlie Hall of Polygon back in November 2014. He talked with Tymiński, who said more about the behind the scenes. In his report, Hall indirectly explains what could have happened. Remember Thomas Gobb, the producer of the game? As I mentioned earlier, thanks to him, the game was able to ship during the holiday season. Tymiński disclosed that around 65 people on Deck 13 were working on the project, and at certain times they had more than 100 other contractors from Virtuos, the third-party company. He said that Gob and his team of 10 people in the Warsaw office were working around the creative and artistic vision for the game. I was able to find an Eurogamer German report back in 2015 that may also add some clarity about the fallout. GameZilla, a Polish website, made an interview to Jan Klose, CEO of Deck 13. Before you ask, I didn't directly use GameZilla interview since the webpage doesn't work. Anyhow, he said, working with them wasn't always easy, but we're used to working with publishers in difficult circumstances, so we coped, and so they did. In the end, it was a cool and successful game. Therefore, we are not sure what is really behind this step and are currently examining it. In this same report, it was stated that CI Games cited poor execution as the reason, which, according to Klose, like many players, can't really be understood. So, I believe that between the crunch, the lack of a clear management structure and someone doing the tough decisions, the huge stress put on the artists, programmers, and game designers to fulfill their goals, the failure of meeting said goals, double working on the same things, poor communications, and poor sales led to CI Games to decide not to work with Deck 13. Before encountering this behind-the-scenes interview, I was speculating a lot since getting to know why this separation happened isn't that clear and you can only find the big corporate answers that really doesn't answer anything at all. So the reason is clear: internal and external issues with not meeting the sales expectations. Whether you like it or not, Lords of the Fallen is a fun game that has insanely good graphics and art direction, but sadly isn't that memorable. And this is it, pal, Lords of the Fallen. I hope that I have done justice to this game with this little review. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to keep playing it on my own because I had fun in the moment-to-moment combat. But let me know in the comment section if you have ever played it, or if you are willing to test it, and if you are going to play the sequel, or did you already do it? If you wanna see more videos, I made a neat analysis of the recently released Separate Ways DLC for Resident Evil 4 Remake, and some months ago, I made a video analyzing RE4 Remake from a very particular point of view. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you on whatever video I will do next. I hope you have an awesome day, pod. Bye bye.